The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those knuckleheads of liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We're coming at you on February 27th, 2023. And here on the show, we're bringing you the people and the organizations that are fighting for liberty around the country and in your area. And so today we have a special guest, Andrew Lippian. He is a city councilman in Elyria, Ohio. So, yeah. And if you want to hear more about Andrew as well, we just recently did a show where I mangled the name Elyria. But you can hear more about you can hear more about Andrew there. But right now we're going to talk about some issues. But before we do that, let me introduce you to the rest of the panel today. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. So since we're in Ohio, and by the way, let me bring up the page, James, real quick, just to show everybody. So here is the city council page for Elyria. You can see Andrew there. And just so everybody gets a sense of where we're at on the map, Ohio is right up here by the Great Lakes. And Elyria is just near Cleveland. But you know, there's interesting stuff going on in Ohio right now, and the big news is that whole train disaster that they had in East Palestine, which is actually down near this end of the map here. So it's I guess kind of south east of Cleveland, I guess, near the border of Pennsylvania. And so the issue there was they had this, just in case you've been living in a cave. Yes, they had this terrible train derailment where a train was carrying, some toxic substances along with fuel and other stuff. And they had a big train derailment, and it caused a big spill of some of these things. And they decided, both the company, the Norfolk Southern, and our political leaders in that area decided in all their wisdom to just light it up. It's a way to get rid of it. And of course, that created a big kind of disaster in the town. And they're finding now that they have all kinds of contaminants and other things, and people were afraid to drink the water and other such problems there. Everybody's wondering what's going on there. People are upset about the government's response and, of course, Norfolk Southern's response. As far as some of the craziness around this issue, right after they decided to burn all this stuff and send those huge smoke plumes into the air, both governors of Pennsylvania and Ohio told everybody, hey, it's all good and it's under control. Go back to your residence. And it turned out that, well, maybe that wasn't the case. So there's a lot of discombobulation among a lot of the political leadership on this. And it's funny, this is even working its way into presidential politics as well, because, who should turn up? But Donald Trump has even shown up to say, hey, he supports these residents in this area, and trying to show that, I guess he's showing up with a lot of bottled water and everything else. But what makes it crazy is that nobody from the administration has bothered to show up yet. So, I take that back.
Well, Buttigieg did show up, but that was only after a bunch of backlash and pressure.
Exactly, and after Trump showed up, Buttigieg showed up. So, and my understanding is Biden has no plans on showing up anytime soon. So I guess I would throw it out there to you guys. Any thoughts that you guys have on this kind of crazy debacle that's kind of between a semi-private industry, the rails, and government leadership in that area?
Well, we'll let our guests go first, but Andrew, you can state your disclaimer at this time, please.
Sure. As a member of the Ohio Air National Guard, I express opinions on the show, but they're not representative of the Ohio Air National Guard. Officially, they're my opinions and mine only.
Okay.
So going into the East Palestine train debacle, it's just disheartening. You know, you don't make things better by lighting them on fire. I think many of us may have learned this in youth. And you know, you're reading about the noxious fumes that are in the air, but the thing that breaks my heart the most is that the people there are feeling forgotten.
Yes.
And that is something that bothers me because, as you know, as we talked about in our last segment, one of my main missions is to make everybody feel like they're important and know that they matter in Ward 1. And I'm getting the sense that East Palestine is not feeling like they matter right now. And actually, one of the things I'm working on, I started a Good Neighbors initiative in Ward 1, and we do things for the community. And one of the things we're working on right now is getting bottled water together so we can distribute it to East Palestine and give them some needed relief.
Yes. You know, East Palestine, to me, represents failure of government at all levels. You know, I mean, we want the government out of our lives as much as possible. But one of the primary functions of government is to protect its citizens. And in this case, it failed and failed miserably. The government failed and failed miserably. The governor of Ohio and the governor of Pennsylvania, because I believe East Palestine is very close to the border, somewhere there. They both signed off on that burn that occurred. They both signed off on it. And now, after the fact, they come saying, well, you know, it wasn't really our intent. There could have been alternative, blah, 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 and all this kind of damn nonsense. The fact of the matter is that they all fail, and they are failing those people. I mean, there's some real problems there because people are getting sick. And J.D. Vance, we saw that clip of J.D. Vance in putting that stick in the river.
Oh, speaking of which, Leon, we actually forgot to show that. Maybe while you're talking, okay. James, can you bring up the video clip? This is actually illustrative of some of the fears.
You come here, and let me just show this to people. I don't know if you're going to see this on camera, but watch this. Just see that chemical pop out of the creek. This is disgusting. And the fact that we have not cleaned up the train crash, the fact that these chemicals are still seeping in the ground is an insult to the people who live in East Palestine.
Yeah, sorry about that. I forgot all about the video clip.
Yeah, no problem. But this is exactly the point. The ground is poisoned. The water is poisoned. Fishes are dying. Okay? And they're still telling these people, the people in East Palestine, well, you know, it's safe. Don't worry about it. We're looking at dead fishes in the streams, but it's safe, you know? Don't worry about it. Everything is cool. We could go bathe our kids in that water. God help these people.
I can imagine there's going to be a lot of wildlife there that kick the bucket, too.
Yes.
Yeah. No,
government failure all around. All around.
Yeah.
They're not even doing their primary duty. Not even their primary duty.
Yeah, I do think it's important, though, to acknowledge the fact that this is there's also it's sort of a quasi-private failure here because railroads aren't quite a completely private company the way libertarians would like to see private companies. I mean, there's a lot of special regulations and other restrictions that go in. They're kind of like a utility, but not quite. In fact, James, maybe you could bring up the visual. The Federal Railroad Administration is the entity that regulates railroads, and so this kind of gives you a sense of the numbers that we're talking about here. But so they're not quite, they don't quite have control over everything they're doing, but they do have a significant amount. Like, for instance, they did fight the idea of putting these new braking systems they were talking about from back when Obama was president. I believe that they were sort of discussing that, debating that, and the industry ultimately lobbied against putting those braking systems on. And so that might have solved part of this problem. So, anyways.
But then you're still talking government failure, even though it was all this thing happened when I think in 2015, I think is what you're talking about. But it's still government failure. I mean, not doing what they're supposed to do. I mean, if they're going to regulate the railroad lines and all that, and the transportation of goods and goods through rails. If they've taken it upon themselves to regulate these lines and do a damn good job at doing it, rather than all this hodgepodge kind of damn nonsense they're doing. I mean, even after the tragedy, after the derailment, at least, I mean, show some competency.
Yeah.
They didn't, and they're still not. Even the president even refused to visit the place.
Yeah.
I think that's why we're libertarians, Leon.
Yeah, I guess.
Well,
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Yes.
One thing that's kind of interesting in this as well, and I'm not 100% sure who's responsible for this, but there's kind of a funny video out there, and I'm not going to actually try and show the video, but I think you can take the from the image and the picture. This is a picture of a train track in Ohio that somebody put up. In fact, it's not the Bee. The Babylon Bee has this other kind of actual news website where you would think this is satire, but it's not. You look at the train track there, and it is crazy looking. And when they show the video of this train rumbling through, it just sort of wobbles its way through. But so you do have this problem of some of these tracks and the way they're being maintained in places. That's also causing a huge issue. But the funny side about all this is that, you know, the safest method for transporting some of this stuff would be pipeline. And it's funny, the Biden administration people in the Biden administration have even said pipeline is the way to go on sending some of these dangerous liquids in places. But of course, and this is an article as well from the Manhattan Institute, where they said that literally Americans are more likely to get struck by lightning, they said, than killed in a pipeline accident. So, I mean, you know, this sounds like a pretty safe way to go. And yet, you know, the Biden administration, his first act in office was to kill the Keystone. Now, it didn't quite go through this area, but it was sort of regional, you know, going fairly close. The Keystone would have come somewhat near Ohio. But it's just the idea that you see the politics around some of this stuff. And once again, government not always acting in the best interests as far as safety goes, it seems like, for the people. You guys have any thoughts on the whole pipeline versus rail issue?
Andrew?
Andrew, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I think it's certainly important to note that our gas prices, you know, the price of gas would be a lot more stable during this time where Ukraine is at war with Russia, had we accomplished the Keystone XL pipeline.
Yes.
There are many environmental concerns, and certainly they deserve a serious analysis, but the point needs to be made that proactivity strengthens our country against unforeseen circumstances. The war in Ukraine was an unforeseen circumstances, the invasion, I should say, of Ukraine. And had the Keystone XL pipeline been completed before then, it would be one more area in which we could have had some stability in price.
And that is absolutely true, you know, but the whole problem is this environmental climate change religion or cult that have taken over our society is causing government to make some decisions, at least the left-leaning government, to make some decisions, and that is not in our best interest. And this is the big problem. That Keystone pipeline, which they already had started to lay pipe in the ground and all this sort of things, in the middle of the project, Biden gets into office and decides to cancel this thing without even consideration of the impact upon it. Even the Canadian government, which is led by this left-leaning lunatic, Justin Trudeau, even he objected to it. Okay, even though he's all with the climate change, garbage and all that kind of stuff, and even he objected, still they did it. And when we see all these prices running up and down and running all over the place and that kind of stuff, they want to blame everybody else except their idiotic policies. This is the nonsense that's going on in our society, and God help us, really. God help us.
Well, Leon, it's like you said about cancel culture being like a cult. Cancel culture came for Keystone.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. I didn't think about that. Well said. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, it was your idea. I just floated it.
You know, something that's also interesting about the whole issue of climate change, and when they talk about something like, canceling Keystone, I mean, part of the reason they were doing it is because they're saying, okay, well, look, we don't want there to be incentives for more fossil fuels to be put out. But one of the crazy things is that if you're still going to use the fossil fuels, then you want to transport those in the most efficient way possible, because that means the least emissions, right? So if you transport something in a less efficient way, then you're literally working against yourself if you know you're going to be. And, Biden literally was just out there admonishing the oil companies during his State of the Union, saying, well, even though I've been sending you all the signals to say we got to cancel this, oil stuff. Still, we need you to keep building because we need you for at least another decade. So, I don't know.
But this is the damn nonsense, though. I mean, right now, at this moment, we have nothing. We do not have any energy source that could replace fossil fuels right now. Okay. Now, at some point in the future, we might, but we can't be making policies like if this energy is going to fall from heaven, like manna from heaven. We have to be. I mean, this is an issue to be worked out in the marketplace. We do not have anything to replace fossil fuels at this point in time, and these people moving ahead like, oh, this wind and solar nonsense, these so-called renewables could solve the problem, but it can't. It is nonsense. But these people just moving along. They're canceling the Keystone pipeline. They have this war on fossil fuels. Like if we have something to replace it at this point in time. And the only thing that is even viable is nuclear, and they don't want that either. So it's crazy.
Are they putting the cart in front of the horse, Leon?
Big time, man. Big time. Yes. A big cart in front of a tiny horse. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a segue into the next story we're going to talk about. It's funny because he immediately, the first thing Biden did was, I guess he really has something against pipeline, so he killed the Keystone pipeline. But oddly, he promoted the completion, I think it was of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. I remember there was a pipeline there in Europe that he immediately came in and he promoted the completion of it. Yes. But then it looks like, and maybe we could get the visual up on this, James, Seymour Hersh recently published a story that it sounds like Biden actually went back to his normal stripes and he actually killed the pipeline without letting everybody know what he was planning on doing.
After threatening to kill it a few scant months prior to killing it, he killed it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. In fact, we do have a video segment of that. But James, could you pull up the video segment real quick? So Biden literally telegraphed that this is what he was going to do, and here is the video segment. James,
Russia
you got
invades. That means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Possibly.
So I think what we saw there is, a guy who literally plays poker with his cards like out there where everybody can see what he's got the whole time he's playing. And I can't even believe he said this, because at the time, I mean, suppose he didn't do it, which is, it sounds like it's not likely, but suppose he didn't do it, then he's kind of set himself up as the fall guy. So it's just absolutely nuts. But anyways, this is the big.
But whether this was a legitimate policy or not to sabotage the line, okay? Whether or not, I mean, we could argue about whether or not, I mean, whatever. You wanted to sabotage the line. But this is not something you should be talking about in public. I mean, this man is on such, seriously, such great cognitive decline. You have to wonder sometimes.
Wait, are we pissed off because he made the wrong decision about doing it, or pissed off because he played his hand out there for everyone to see? I mean, what's the worst thing? I mean, personally, I vote for the former. He had absolutely zero business doing that. I mean, that's all that was just to try to weaken Russia. The great
zero business doing sabotaging the line is what you're saying.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Well, keep in mind
on so many levels. On number one, the fact that it's just not how you do diplomacy. Number one. Number two, it's an act of war without a congressional declaration. Number two. Number three, you're
against an ally too, because Germany was one of their assets.
Number three was you're doing it against an ally. I mean, how many? And then, okay, number four, you forgot to read Sun Tzu's Art of War, and you played your hand out there like a complete moron. Yeah, yes, all those things. Well, I mean, it's like how many ways can you screw this up? And that's four right there, and probably there's more. Anybody else?
Well, on top of that, I still think even whether or not this was a legitimate act. Well, you think it's illegitimate because it's an act of war and yes. No war it was declared by Congress. That's fine. It is still dumb policy to be speaking about this sort of thing in public.
Well, okay, Leon, but that's number 4 on my list. Maybe it's number 1 on yours, but number 1 still is that even tactically. Or strategically, I should say, the strategic look at it. If you're at war with a country, then you probably want to cut off one of their ways that they do business with other countries. Okay, right. Yeah, okay. If you're strategically at war with them, are we strategically at war with Russia? Yes or no? And I say, because there's been no declaration, but formal declaration of war against Russia, we are not. And this is just almost said it, but I refrained. Do you see that? That's called self-control, Leon. When you want to say the word BS, you hold yourself back.
Well, you're clearly constraining yourself more than Biden can constrain himself. And speaking of secrets, I mean, my gosh, Biden has shown us in the past that he clearly, this is the type of thing that should have been kind of classified, I would think, but we've seen how he handles classified documents.
Yeah.
Well, did you remember before the invasion of Ukraine, he said if it was a minor incursion, it was okay. This is what the man said.
Yeah. Again, the poker cards completely show.
Right.
His hand just out there.
Andrew's thinking because. Okay, so Andrew's thinking because I saw his eyes shift up and to the left. So that means that he's thinking about what he wants to say. Fire away, Andrew.
Tim, as a libertarian, we're always thinking, right? So one of the things that came to mind, and this should be discussed, is that when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine was awkwardly left with the world's 3rd largest nuclear arsenal. And how did the West handle that? The West punished or threatened to punish Ukraine with sanctions, economic sanctions, if they did not disarm all of their nukes. That brought us to the Budapest Memorandum, which was an agreement with several nations, Boris Yeltsin of Russia, Bill Clinton of the United States, and others. And the agreement was Ukraine will dismantle all their nuclear weapons and give them to Russia in exchange for some economic relief and also Russia's promise never to invade Ukraine. Well, we see how empty a promise that ended up being.
That was.
And unfortunately, we put Ukraine in that position by completely eliminating the most meaningful deterrent against Russian aggression. And now we've seen this invasion take place, and it's really quite sad. But the wonderful thing about this is the Ukrainians have shown their mettle, their grit, and their toughness, and how they fought against this illegal incursion into their land.
Yeah. Well, do you believe, Andrew, that we the taxpayers of the United States should be supporting Ukraine in this endeavor to fight off the Russians?
Well, I think to answer your question properly, I want to put it in some historical context. When Great Britain was fighting the Nazi Blitz, and they were defending the Sceptred Isle from encroaching tyranny, they received all sorts of support from the United States, to include the Lend-Lease program and other things. And at the time, there were many people in the country saying, why are we supporting Britain? Well, we can see why. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, we found ourselves in World War II. It's a good thing Great Britain didn't collapse before the Japanese bombed us, or else we'd be even worse trouble. We might not have won World War II. So when I look at the issue in Ukraine, I say with the Russian bear, although a Ukrainian refugee corrected me and said he's not a bear. Bears protect their family. He's more like a little coward, which I would agree. But he's licking his chops for Moldova and the Baltics. If he's able to delegitimize NATO and threaten, the international order, it's not going to change the world in the way that we want it to change. Certainly, the Russian version of freedom means any criticism against the government is jail or worse. And I think it's in our best geopolitical interest to check this in any way that we can.
But,
okay. Well, what about the responsibility of NATO for adding all these nations? Now it went from how many before Bill Clinton added a number of nations. Now we're up to, I think, 43 nations.
Somewhere around there.
NATO.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah. Okay. And so
everybody but Russia
and Ukraine
Well,
important to note. But I mean, and many of these are right up against Russia's doorstep. So I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, okay, so China becomes connected to Mexico, and they decide that we're going to protect Mexico from invasion by the United States, which historically, that we've got precedent there. Which nations have ever invaded Mexico? Okay, there's only one, and so. We're going to bring some tactical nuclear warheads, and we're going to put them in Mexico to defend against the United States. And so, how would we respond to that? And so as an analogy to what Putin has done, and I mean, he's just a tin horn dictator, like our dictator, Joe Biden. But, that doesn't mean that I like the guy. However, I can understand from a strategic standpoint that the guy wants to, he's not going to ever not be able to get to his only warm water port that they've had for 300 years or have had access to, include in the Crimea, in the Donbass. And he's going to want to keep.
Uh-oh.
Only warm water port in Sevastopol.
Tim was frozen there.
Yeah.
Well,
Tim, what I think is important to remember is that the Russians have always had Kaliningrad, which is an exclave. It used to be called Königsberg, then it was part of Germany. It's that little piece of Europe that Russia didn't let go of. And interestingly enough, when Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, because that's what that was, it was an invasion, I think that the West should have taken more deliberate actions on the border of Kaliningrad to remind Russia that you have this little exclave over here that's geographically separated from the mainland, and you might want to think twice before you invade Crimea. But they didn't do that, and what Russia's done since then is they've moved nuclear weapons into Kaliningrad. So, and it's not the first time. If Mexico has been involved in World War I. The Germans tried to reach out to Mexico, and we did take that as a serious threat. They tried to encourage Mexico to consider internecine warfare with the United States. But I think it's important to keep in context here the first Cold War. Vladimir Putin is now finishing the grievances of Cold War I, much like people accused George W. Bush of doing for George H.W. Bush, finishing, they used to say finishing what his daddy started. Vladimir Putin is trying to finish what the Soviet Union started. And we saw what the Soviet Union did when Stalin collectivized Ukrainian crops and killed more Ukrainians in Holodomor in Ukraine than Hitler killed Jews in the Holocaust. I mean, we see what happens when this totalitarian regime is pressuring on Europe. I think we've been over-concerned with provoking Putin instead of deterring him, and I think we have to match any threats Putin makes against the West with strength.
Well, Andrew, there was something that you said at the beginning of your first point on this that I actually took to heart, and that's that. A lot of times people are saying, hey, look, we're playing world policeman by maybe adding all these people to NATO. But think about, too, the way we played world policeman by pressuring Ukraine to give up their nuclear weapons at first. So, I mean, this is really, if you really trace this back, why the hell are we playing world policeman so much? I mean, we seem to be making a mess of it everywhere. Well, and if we had just left Ukraine alone when the Soviets fell, then maybe Ukraine would be able to defend itself today. So it just seems like one thing after another. We move around the world telling people we're moving things around like chess pieces on a chessboard for our defense, and we just seem to create disasters. I don't know.
Are you talking about the same type of governments that set fire to toxic chemicals? Is that what you're talking about?
We think they're responsible to manage everything around the world. Those same people.
No, but if I may say though, before we leave this topic though, I never understand the expansion of NATO argument that threatened Putin. Every country that joined NATO was a sovereign country who have the complete right of self-determination. So if even Ukraine wanted to join NATO, it is their damn business, not Vladimir Putin's. Now, I know you guys will make the argument that, well, if Mexico come there, what would we do and all that kind of stuff like that. Fine, that'll be something that we'll have to disentangle. But we are a sovereign nation, and they are all sovereign nations, and they have the damn well right to say who and hell they want, which organization they want to join, and which organization they don't want to join. They have to make that determination.
Well,
so that's the argument I can never understand. Just to be clear.
That's interesting, Leon, and I think Mexico's a country to watch. Russia is on the verge of collapse. I've been saying this for years, and it was
I
on the
agree
verge
with that.
before it invaded Ukraine. They don't have the population numbers. They've fallen off since 1991. They don't have the population to defend their borders, much less encroach upon others' borders. And when we look at Mexico, they're one of the few countries to straddle the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Mexico is definitely going to be a power player in the next 50 years, no question.
Yes. Okay, so if Russia's about ready to collapse, then why is NATO in existence for these countries to be able to join in the first place? Leon, I'm addressing that to you and Andrew. If they're so weakened, okay, so you cannot have your cake and eat it too, gentlemen. You either have this massive thing that you got to be protecting. Everybody's got to join NATO to protect against this massive military force, economic powerhouse, or then you don't need NATO because they're not a strong nation anymore and they're on the verge of collapse. Which one is it?
Well, Tim, you're contradicting yourself and you don't even realize it.
No,
okay?
I'm not. You guys.
Yes, we are. Listen, brother. We are libertarians, okay? And people, like countries, have choices that they can make or they cannot make. If anybody want to join NATO, they could do so, as long as they are a sovereign nation. I don't know why, even the fact that I believe, and like Andrew does, Russia is on the verge of collapse. Collapse. I truly believe that. Okay, yeah, that is irrelevant to of a country, a sovereign country, making a choice to join an international organization. It's totally irrelevant.
The international organization should be disbanded. NATO should be disbanded because it's no longer needed. Because why? Because you guys made an excellent point. Russia's on the verge of collapse.
Well,
End of story.
If I can jump in, that's my assessment that Russia's on the verge of collapse. It remains to be seen how the future is going to play out. And I think that NATO is an important bulwark against Russia's territorial ambitions, which they've just displayed are quite robust. In the event Russia's collapse, I think we can pick up this conversation and ask those questions. But in the meantime, I think it's a relevant organization that's keeping liberty protected from the encroachment of a tyrant, which is little insecure Vladimir Putin.
Well, let me police this
conflict
we're having here.
I'm on your side on this one, okay? I'm on your side on this one.
Okay. We're all libertarians at the end of the day, guys.
Yes, we are.
Let me police this conflict in a ham-handed Biden sort of way and just jump in and say, let's get to another liberty issue here. And let me take you back to Ohio. For this one. There's actually kind of an interesting story that's popped up in Ohio, and I kind of wanted to get Andrew's take on this as well, since it's kind of an interesting thing that's going on there. But James, maybe you could bring the visual up. Ohio is actually kind of found an interesting way to sort of get around some of this state licensing problem that we've been hearing about all over the place. The idea that, my God, to cut somebody's hair or to arrange flowers, you need licensing. licenses in a lot of places, which just seems absolutely nuts. But at least Ohio is kind of saying, well, you know what, we're not pulling away all the licenses, but at least we're not going to make you retest when you come to Ohio to get the same license, which I thought was kind of interesting. And, there was a side thing on this when we talked to somebody from Pennsylvania the other day as well. And they also did something at the executive level where they, and not throughout the entire state, but at least for state government, they said, look, we're going to, at the executive level, we're just going to say, look, you don't need so many of these ridiculous degrees and licenses in order to get a lot of state jobs. It was the governor of Pennsylvania who signed an executive order. So it was so it sounds like there might be something in the water besides pollutants near Ohio and Pennsylvania, where they're really taking some creative ways to approach this terrible issue of over licensing and over credentialing. So what do you guys think about this?
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction. Go ahead, Tim. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think certain things like this. I think states should have sovereignty. Also, if they want to have licensing or not. I think they're under their own dominion. And I'm wondering if they have also reciprocity for concealed carry permits. Do they allow other states to? I know Andrew may know the answer to that one. Is concealed weapons licenses from other states recognized in Ohio, which would be another similar thing. But so at the same time, I think it's a for cutting hair and things like that. It's okay to, if they want to recognize those licenses. I think it's a step in the right direction. But I also hold out if they're not okay with it, it's within their jurisprudence. Or is that right? I don't know.
Yeah, we may think it's a dumb idea, some of these laws, but it is within their jurisdiction or whatever you want to call it to do such
domain.
A thing. Yes. Domain.
I don't know. Andrew.
Domain is correct. Yes, Andrew, what do you think?
Well, the state of Ohio just passed a law stating that you don't need a concealed carry permit to carry in Ohio anymore.
Oh.
So I still have mine, and I guess I need to, snip it up into pieces because it's about as useful as a blank sheet of paper for my Xerox copier. But, when we're talking about licenses, and I'm remembering now when the East Palestine train hit, we talk about food freedom, all the regulations that are on food that limit free choice over what food you're putting into your body. And I think that when we're looking at licensing, it's sort of along the same lines. As libertarians, we're very...
Oof.
Uh-oh.
We lost Andrew.
We just lost Andrew. Well, maybe Andrew, we'll get him back.
In the center of a sentence, too.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Maybe now's a good time to jump into the good guys with guns, Tim. You could give us that.
Even though it's quick. Ohio.
Yeah, even though it's
Andrew back because this is Ohio. So we're coming from Toledo, Ohio, back in September, and I'm going to give a racy rundown. So a guy in his home woke up with a bunch of activity out in the front lawn, and some man was beating up a neighbor lady, her boyfriend, and so he.
Oh, and James, can I get the visual for this too? We have a visual as well. Thanks. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I don't know if that's really him, but anyway, he yelled at the guy. He stayed in the house, which is part of the smart thing to do. But eventually, the woman got free from the guy beating on her and came to his door, and he let her in. And the bad guy was right behind, so he was able to. Somehow, in spite of the size difference between the larger attacker, was able to keep him out and lock the door, and was able to take the woman back to the bedroom and barricade that door and get behind there with a staged shotgun, like in the picture. And so he did a lot of the things right, and it ended up that the guy tried to break down the door and gave up eventually, and then went away, and police later found him and so on. So it's one of those stories that ends up where there's a gun that he has available for protection. Didn't have to use it at all, but no one got hurt or injured or anything other than the woman. And anyway, all's well that ends well, I suppose.
Indeed.
Okay. Well, it sounds like another case where somebody's Second Amendment might have helped save the day. So,
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, since we don't have Tim back yet, Andrew back yet, rather, let's jump into our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, and hopefully we'll get them back before the end of this. With respect to, Biden, and let me, darn it, I have lost one of my screens here too, so let me get this back up. But we have had Biden, obviously, sort of adventuring in war all around the world, and that's not stopping him here either, because apparently he started a war against balloons. It's happened in this country. and so it's one of those crazy things that just kind of out of nowhere, but we had this balloon, and maybe we can bring up the visual, James. So there was the Chinese spy balloon that everybody has heard about, essentially a sort of a weather-looking balloon that had a huge contraption underneath it. It sort of was over the Pacific. It drifted out toward, I guess, Alaska, and then just sort of meandered its way over the airspace of the United States. And the Biden administration didn't really it sort of kept it secret, and people just sort of noticed it. People that were just like looking up at the sky and said, "What the hell is that?" And so they realized
I was a guy in Montana who first recognized the spy balloon. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and so they said this is kind of weird, and so people started running some news stories, and finally the government admitted, okay, yeah, this is some kind of Chinese spy balloon, is I guess what they said. But then they didn't shoot it down, and they claimed they had been tracking it over the Pacific. And then finally, when it had completed its sort of course across the United States, they shot it down over the water. And it's kind of a weird issue that sort of begs the question, well, if this was such a threat that you needed to shoot it down after it crossed the United States, and when you were tracking it before it got to the United States, why didn't you shoot it down before? But it seems that Biden kind of got a little bit trigger happy when everybody started saying, well, why are you letting this spy balloon? So now he's shooting down every balloon, it sounds like. And he shot down 3 other balloons since that time. And he came out and he said that, look, these are after he shot them down, saying, yeah, they probably weren't spy balloons that I've been shooting down, even shooting like Sidewinder missiles and missing at some of these balloons. Just kind of crazy.
These things cost $400,000 a pop. Okay, please take note.
And that's just the missile. The entire mission is going to be like $1 million to send a plane up there, shoot a missile or two at this balloon, pilot's time and everything else. But James, maybe you could bring up the video we have of Biden admitting that these were things he's been shooting out of the sky weren't threats.
The intelligence community's current assessment is that these 3 objects were most likely balloons tied to private companies, recreation or research institutions studying weather or conducting other scientific research.
So there you have it. Biden literally just running around blowing up people's balloons. And it's funny, I was listening to a story from Seymour Hersh, the guy who broke the Nord Stream 2 story. And quite frankly, it seems like it's not much of a break when Biden literally puts his whole hand out on the table. But he was the only reporter who was brave enough to actually run the story. But he also, I heard him in an interview saying that he thinks that at least one of these balloons might have been a weather balloon that we paid for out of a university in Alaska that he's familiar with. And the idea, so I mean, we're literally not just shooting down private balloons, we're shooting down kind of our own balloons.
Just
nuts. Yeah. So do you guys have any thoughts on this whole fiasco of Biden running around shooting down balloons?
Go, Tim. Go.
Man, where do you start? I guess I have to, I get it. Okay, I didn't shoot the big scary balloon that is, in my opinion, just a weather balloon, because China has satellite technology that is much more capable than anything a balloon that's just floating in the wind can do. So they don't need to spy on us with a balloon, number one, and it's probably just a weather balloon. And why you didn't take them at their word when they said that it was. Well, of course they're going to lie all the time anyway. I get it. Okay, I get it, but it's serious miscalculation of the motivation behind China to send a balloon to spy on something in the United States that's floating around in the wind when they have satellites to do all that, and we do it to them. And so, what's the diff? So what? So either one of two things. Either if you're going to shoot it down, you're going to do it over the big skies of Montana, those highly populated, where everybody's crammed into huge cities in Montana, the big sky country where the guy saw it. Okay, you're either going to shoot it down and retrieve it there, because the chances of it hitting somebody are 1 in a bazillion. Okay, and you calculate everything with winds and everything. If you're gonna shoot it down over there. Okay, if you're not going to shoot it down until it crosses the entire United States and gets out over the Pacific Ocean. If you're going to wait till then don't shoot it down at all. I mean, any damage could have been done, coulda, woulda, shoulda, is going to be done. Number one. Number two, then it's like, oh, I've got to save face now. I've got to start shooting down every balloon that pops up. Some little kid sends a Mylar balloon into the sky. Oh, daddy, my balloon went away. And you're going to shoot that down with a Sidewinder. I'm exaggerating, obviously. But that's just trying to save face. And now he just ends up with mud on his face.
Andrew, just to let you know, since we just got Andrew back, we're talking about Biden's war on balloons that I guess he's hoping to send a message to Russia and China with.
I want to beg your pardon. A large balloon flew overhead and cut off my signal momentarily. But it's okay.
Biden took it off for you. Now you're back.
Some brave citizen brandished a BB gun and shot it out of the air. So
decidedly cheaper than a Sidewinder.
Yes. He didn't have to spend $400,000 to cut you off, Andrew. He didn't have to do that,
You know what? For you guys, it was worth it. So, but there's been a lot of hot air dispelled over this balloon saga,
without a doubt.
One way of getting around the issue is that the surveillance state is creepy enough, but China's surveillance state is probably the worst of any country you can find. And for them to export their surveillance over to the U.S. in such a blatant way, it gives me pause. It does. We have privacy interests in this country, and they shouldn't be encroached upon without due consent. And we never gave China that consent. So, I just think it's disturbing.
Do you think it was a spy balloon when they have satellites that do this even better job of spying? And you're putting a spy balloon up there that's drifting around, and wherever the wind takes it, that
was a directed thing. All of the first balloon was definitely a spy balloon. The next three were just weather stuff, just like Biden said.
Leon,
okay,
but that first balloon was a spy balloon, and Leon, it was not just going anywhere.
Leon,
it specifically went by some of our most sensitive facilities. It wasn't just going anywhere. Believe me.
Leon, I'm afraid you might be inflating the issue a little too much. Leon, I think accepting the Chinese Communist Party's excuse that this was a weather balloon is asinine, and to think we're that naive that we actually believe that is laughable. As to the other three devices that we shot out of the sky, I mean, Tim, you're a pilot, you know more about that than I, but it just seems a little fishy. I'm a little skeptical about the general excuse for what those were. I don't know what they were, and I don't think that people are being forthright with us about it.
Yeah.
So you think the last three balloons may have been spy balloons or something else of that nature too? Really?
No, I'm not saying they could have been spy balloons. I'm saying I don't know what they were. and I don't know that I
Oh.
buy the de rigueur political answers that we've been getting about them.
Well, just to throw
Yeah.
one thing
Oh.
in, it was something that you were cut out for, so I just refresh this one. But Seymour Hersh, the guy who published the Nord Stream 2 story, he was also, I heard him on an interview, and he had been at this, I guess, university at Anchorage, Alaska, or someplace up there. I'm not sure which one it was, but he said that they actually have a weather balloon program up there, and it's his understanding that he thinks one of these may be a balloon that we paid for. So I mean, it's government, one hand knowing what the other is doing. I don't know, but I haven't heard that story confirmed anywhere. But his Nord Stream 2 take was pretty good, I think.
Well, I guess the answer is in regards to the balloon, whether you like it or not, it isn't. So we've got to perhaps accept it, and next time we see something,
something is going on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Andrew,
you
you're
guys
full
getting
of
some
puns today.
Yeah. Well, I
Andrew's
am a
full of
funder
puns.
territory, guys.
balloon interference.
Exactly. Yep. Go.
Well, Andrew, you got cut off on the last issue, and I just wanted to give you a chance to finish what you were thinking on that with regards to the licensure issue. Did you want to finish your thoughts on that for the audience as well?
Yeah, I think the development is encouraging. I think we are over licensed out here. James Bond has a license to kill, but that a license to cut hair, a license to do all these other things. Certainly the overburdensome regulations, relaxing them a little bit isn't a bad thing as long as they don't increase unnecessary risk. And according to what the state of Ohio is doing, it doesn't look like they will. So I think that it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, risking a bad haircut's not not the worst, not the end of the world.
As long as you're
but those flower arrangements, though, when they mess up on the flower arrangements,
that's a thorny
issue. That's a
yeah,
that is a thorny issue.
Hey, well, it just occurred to me some of those flower arrangements have balloons, and if one of those got loose, you could be talking Armageddon.
We've got a sidewinder for that.
That's the South Koreans have been delivering Western media and Western culture to North Korea through balloons for a long time now. So, but that's, I guess, a different kind of balloon. We'll have to keep our eyes peeled for those too if they come from China.
Well, I think we've just about reached the end of the show. But Andrew, is there anything you'd like to share with the audience? And I'll bring up your city council page real quick so that people can see that again. Andrew is, again, just to remind you, a city council member in Elyria, Ohio, and certainly he's on the ground fighting for liberty in that area. He's somebody who's actually elected in office, and he is a libertarian. So we definitely want to, do anything we can to support people like that. So is there anything that you want to leave the audience with, or anything that you want people to know about what you're doing or your future plans or anything else?
Yeah, Jason, actually there is. I just emailed you a GoFundMe. If you can bring it up, that would be helpful. We had an incident last week that took place where a car rammed into the back of a private business. Espresso Bakery was the name of this business, and almost killed the people in the bakery. One escaped with a broken ankle, but it could have been much worse. And I'm trying to get the city to put up barricades to protect the business because this is the third time it's been hit since the 70s. And they're in some serious trouble. So I've created a GoFundMe. And that the purpose of the GoFundMe is to try and relieve some of the damages that insurance just isn't going to pay for, likely. And it's so far it's gotten it's going up to $5,000 right now. And this private business, these people are self-determinists. They've never asked for help from anybody. And that's why I knew I had to create the GoFundMe, because they would never ask for it. It's a very valued business in our ward. So there it is. Thank you. So yeah, if people can contribute and support this small business, it's a staple of our community. That would be much appreciated. Just
is there something in particular about this business as to why they've been hit previously and currently? Is there something particular about this business?
Sure. Well, and really quickly, I want to say I'm not endorsing or promoting a small business here. I'm just trying to gather relief for someone who's been hurt. And so to your question, Leon, yeah, it was hurt in the 70s when it was a different establishment. About 8 years ago, it was a business called The Hive. It was a yoga studio. It got hit again by a car. And this time it got hit again. And that's because there's not proper retroreflective paint in that area. And also because it's right by a roadway, it's right by a curb. And it seems to me that the person just wasn't watching where they were going, and they just didn't see the curb, and they went straight, and they went right into the back of the building for the third time since the 70s. Not good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, sounds like they need to light
I'm really
that
sorry
up
to hear
there.
this. I'm really sorry to hear this.
Yeah, maybe a barrier or
Yes.
two might be what they should put some of those funds toward.
Right.
Those
Yeah,
ones they put
then the
around
barrier-
like Capitol buildings and stuff.
Well, I've made a request
think-
for Jersey
wow.
barricades just until we can do a traffic study and make a determination if we should put a guardrail or some poles there. And I think Jersey barricades are the least we should give them so they can reopen without the fear that at some point a car is going to get launched like a missile into the back of their place and potentially kill them. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah.
That's-
I see a point. I see a point. Yes. I see a point.
Yeah, so
Wow.
you're looking at plan A, and then plan B and C are down the road, but that's great.
That's right. And again, I just want to remind everybody, I'm not, promoting this business as a business. I'm just promoting getting relief to a business in our ward that's gotten that's hit a tragedy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully this will help some people, spread the word out there. But thanks again so much, Andrew, for coming on and letting people know about the good work you're doing there in Ohio. And, we look forward to your future progress in fighting and promoting for liberty. So thank you.
Yes.
And thank you all for watching. Until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.